Hello everyone, it's me, Aaron, and welcome to another comic class, Indy Spotlight. Yes, that's right, once a month on this channel, I'm going to spotlight some cool indie books that you can find at your local comic book store right now. And today, I'm going with kind of a weird one. The book that I'm spotlighting today is actually a horror series, which I know means that not everybody out there is going to be into it, but if you've watched this channel for long enough, then you know that I'm something of a horror junkie. I love horror movies, I love horror video games. However, when it comes to horror comics, it's really hard for me to find one that actually speaks to me. I enjoy a lot of horror comics, but not a lot of them really creep me out. I tend to enjoy them more for the characters, more for the settings, more for the imagination that goes into it, not really for the horror elements. However, this series, Croak, at least I'm hoping that's how it's pronounced. I've never actually heard anyone say this word out loud before, but Croak is a brand new series coming from Alterna Comics. Now, it's only a 3-part series. In fact, this actually premiered as a digital-only comic, and all 3 parts of it have already come out in digital format. However, I am going through this issue by issue as it comes out as a physical release, partly because the company that is putting this book out, Alterna Comics, they really believe in the physical format. They have actually been making a large push to actually go back to newsprint format, so I know I have a lot of fans out there who actually prefer the old newsprint comics, and actually because they're newsprint, they're actually a lot cheaper than regular comics. The issue number 1 for Croak was only $1.50, which I believe actually makes it the first time ever I have seen the physical release of a digital comic actually cost less than the digital version. So in order to keep supporting physical comics, and also just because it's cheaper, I'm going to be reading this issue by issue as it comes out. But if anybody picks up issue number 1 and they're intrigued by it, then you can actually read every single issue of it by going to Comixology. But I'm not here to get into the whole debate of physical comics versus digital comics. No, I am here to tell you about a darn good creepy series. Now, Croak is about 3 friends who are going on a camping trip. Pretty standard stuff for a horror comic. However, it's a formula that actually really works for me. Again, if you have watched any of my old Halloween videos that I have done, I tend to always bring up the fact that the woods scare the crap out of me. I actually grew up way out in the woods, so I understand how terrifying it is to be that far away from civilization. And I really gotta say, the artist on this series captures that. The artist actually captures that feeling of, yeah, you're going far away from anyone that can help you. When they are driving out to the campsite, I was like, yep, that's that feeling that I always get when I haven't seen any other signs or any other buildings in a long time. And the moment that they stop the car and get out to actually go to the camping spot, I just sat there like, that's the fear that I always have whenever I get out of the car and start walking into the woods. That feeling of, I don't know if I'm going to be able to find my way back here. But as I said, issue number 1 shows these 3 characters going off on a camping trip, and this issue is supposed to set up how creepy the woods are, and as I said, the artist does accomplish that, but the writer has to make us feel for these characters. The writer has to also set up the characters themselves and give us, the audience, some kind of attachment to them, and honestly, I don't know what I was expecting going into this series, but I was pleasantly surprised. I was reading this going, you know what? This is actually how friends who have known each other for a while talk with each other. This is some actually really realistic dialogue. I actually do get the sense that these are 3 real characters, and they actually do have a history with one another. They actually can joke around with each other. They know how to joke around with each other. They know everybody's limits. They know the history of each other. And again, the writer doesn't accomplish this by having them stop and go, hey, do you remember that time that we were in this grade and this happened to us? Oh, the memories we've had. No, the writer accomplishes this just through the dialogue. Just by having these characters interact with each other in a way that makes me go, this feels real. I know friends who do relate to each other this way. Now, you guys will have to forgive me, but here on the Indie Spotlight, I do tend to make these episodes pretty short simply because I want you guys to go out there and experience these books for yourselves, but I will typically give you everything that you need to know up until the big twist, up until the big moment that you need to experience yourself. In this issue, that comes pretty darn quick. So I'm not really going to go into much more detail, but let's just say something happens out there in the woods, something that doesn't even connect to what the big threat of the series is, but it is a thing that made me go, oh, this will change things forever. Because as you can tell from looking at the covers of these issues, the big monster of the series are these crow-like creatures that exist out there in the woods, and they're going to hunt down these campers one by one and just peck them off, no pun intended. However, even before you get to them, there is a thing that happens that could have been the entire series itself. That thing that happens to these characters, if you just had that happen out there in the woods, that would have been an amazing series all by itself. It didn't even need the monsters. So the fact that they're doing that and throwing monsters on top of this, that is a horror turducken to me, and I am very excited to continue reading this series and see where it goes. As I said, if you're not like me and you don't want to keep waiting for the physical copies to come out, then you can go on Comixology right now. I will have a link down below to where you can find every single issue of this, and you can just read through the whole thing right now. But if you do want to read the physical copies, as I said, the physical copies actually are cheaper than the digital copies, which I still can't believe that's a thing. But if you do want to read the physical copies, I will also have a link below to where you can go to the publishing company's website, Alterna Comics, and you can find out where you can buy those physical copies on that website. And if your local comic book store does not sell physical copies of this book, like I said, they are a very small indie company, so I would not be surprised. But hey man, if this sounds interesting to you, help an indie company out. Request that your local comic book store does carry a couple copies of it. Actually ask them to order a couple copies. If your local comic book store is like the ones that I had growing up, they'd be more than happy to oblige. But as I said, I'm going to keep this episode simple, short, and sweet because I don't want to give anything away in this issue. But as of right now, issue number 1, I was totally surprised by this book. I was not expecting to enjoy it that much. As I said, I honestly just picked it up because it was $1.50. But yeah, I am actually really intrigued and I really want to see where it goes, and I cannot wait for issue number 2 to come out. So if you have read this, let me know in the comments down below what you thought of it. And if you have a suggestion for next month's Indie Spotlight, make sure that you leave that in the comments down below as well, or contact me on Twitter and Tumblr at Professor Thorgy. Thanks again for watching, everyone. Come back next time.